Okay, can everyone hear us now?
Yep.
And you can see us? Okay, I'm really sorry for wasting your time, everybody. I don't know what our technical issues are. I spent about 2 hours last night trying to fix them, but I guess they're still here. So I beg everybody's pardon for that. And hopefully the screen doesn't fade out again. If it does, I'll have to screen it through my laptop, but the picture will not be as good. So see, it looks like it faded again. All right, I'll have to set through my laptop.
We can see you now, Ngodrup.
No,
Yes, I think we are frozen again.
No. Oh, yes.
I'm positive.
It happened after you switched onto your laptop for audio.
No, actually the laptop's been through the audio, has been through the laptop since the beginning, because the audio doesn't work with our big one anymore.
Okay.
So I'll have to
I thought it was the video that didn't work through the audio works for the desktop.
So we'll have to just stream it through the desktop, I guess, which won't be as good picture quality, but hopefully it will be good enough. It's really frustrating. We have to get this issue resolved. Can you see us now? Okay. All right. All right. I'm really going to have to ask for help with this because this is really stressing me out, but we'll have to do this like this for the meantime. And I'm really sorry, everybody. I feel embarrassed. Okay. I mean, the picture quality is really poor, guys. It's really my apologies. We'll just continue, I think. All right, I think that's good enough. Yes, thank you, everybody. We really have to get this taken care of. Right, so let's. Oh, this. So firstly, Tashi Dele, greetings to all. We hope that you are all well and we hope that you are all happy. And in terms of the task that we are gathered together to do today, we are gathered together to engage in this task of accumulating the causes of perfect happiness. And in so we can say that nominally, of course, all sentient beings are engaged in activities, whether human being, animal, or so forth, for the sake of trying to discover some type of happiness. But the problem is that the way that we are engaged in that task, the way that we are trying to go about that task, is something that is mistaken. So the problem is actually that what's happened is we are trying to achieve those small happinesses. And as soon as we sort of find that small happiness, or as soon as we get rid of that small problem, it doesn't address the root cause. So another problem will come up that will take its place. So because we don't know what the true basis of the problem is, what the true basis of the problem is, what the root of the problem is that brings forth all of the branches of the problem, for that reason, we aren't able to reach our goal. And it's because of that that we aren't able to engage properly, correctly in the practices of method, that we aren't able to engage properly, correctly in the practices of wisdom. And so, in fact, that is what we need to be able to do. And really the problem, beginning of the problem is that in terms of all of our difficulties, in terms of all of the difficult things that we experience, we aren't able to recognize what the very root of all of those difficulties is. And because of that, we are not able to recognize the all-pervasive or compounded suffering, which is the problem that underlies that. And because we are not able to recognize that, we are not able to make real progress. And if we don't recognize the causes of samsara, if we don't know what the causes of samsara are and can't address those, then certainly we won't be able to achieve liberation. If we can't recognize the basis of samsara, if we are not able to tackle samsara at the root, then we certainly won't be able to achieve that perfect, meaningful happiness that we seek. Yeah. And sometimes it is said that actually, in terms of the empathy that creatures are capable of bringing forth, you could make the argument that sometimes the empathy that the animals are able to bring forth exceeds the empathy that the humans can bring forth. And if you say something like that, then of course everybody's offended. Maybe they get even a little bit upset. Why is it the case? Because when we help somebody, whether it's a friend, whether it is our family member, any person who is close to us, we can see that behind that help, we hope to get something in return, right? This is the way of human beings. Oh, yeah. Whereas if we look at the birds, if we look at the other types of animals and so forth, they help their children, they feed their children, they help and feed their children without even a tiny thought of getting something in return. And so if we have that thought of getting something in return, then definitely our practice of compassion, and definitely our practice of empathy, this will be something that is worse, like sort of inferior to that of those in the animal realm. Yes, yes. So one of the great scholars, Lupun Inyan, he stated very clearly that Geshe was not sure if it was Inyan or if it was Pakpala, if it was Aryadeva. But he said that the difference, right, between compassion and attachment is as follows. Attachment is if one's own welfare is the driving force behind. Compassion is if the welfare of others is the main consideration behind. So, for example, if a parent thinks, I don't want my child to endure any difficulties, right? I don't want my child to endure any pain. And behind that is not some sort of self-serving kind of thinking for their own welfare. That is the good kind of compassion. However, some parents think if I help my children now and if I get them well established in life, then later on I will be able to come to some advantage for myself, right? So that would be the inferior kind of compassion. And, also when we talk about the sort of attachment that you see in couples, right? A lot of the time we can see that the male or the female is sort of seeking their own welfare or happiness. So that is also not the supreme type of compassion. And so the type of compassion that we are trying to arise here together, we can think, may the type of compassion that we arise be superior to that of those in the animal realm. And so this was our brief kind of introduction, and now we will do a short meditation for relaxation. He said that today's been very difficult for Ngodrup, trying to no, I mean, I just really feel embarrassed, guys. I really tried to fix everything and it seems like it got worse, so I'm not sure what to do, but anyways, we're here now. Yes. So let us set our mind in a state of relaxation. And as we settle our mind in this state of relaxation, remember this image of setting down the cup of water and allowing all of the particles to settle down.
Then
once we settle the mind, we can practice the 4 close placements of mindfulness, for example, on the body, on feelings, and so forth. And as we place our mindfulness, so look on this. Try to establish an observation mentality with equanimity as we observe perhaps the body. And so from the feet, going from the bottom of the feet to the top of the head, scan through your body and try to identify, where are the most prominent feelings in my body right now? So if we pause in the midsection of our body. Identify where the stomach is. Try to focus the attention on the outside of the stomach and observe the feelings. Then try to focus the attention on the feelings inside the stomach. There is some sort of discomfort or any other feeling that is sort of prominent. Observe and note what that feeling is in the body.
Just
And then the chest. What is the feeling like in the chest? On the outer part of the chest. And in the inner part, what sort of feeling of heaviness or lightness? When I look at the part of the chest, which is mostly external, do I get a different feeling than when I direct my attention to the inside part of the chest, for example? Then the face, the head, and so forth. What feelings emerge when I put my attention there? And as we've directed the mindfulness to our body, another thing that we can observe is that our body has all of these different parts, from the larger components all the way down to the very tiniest atoms. There's not that solid, strong body that we see when we initially look at it. We can't find that. There is this grasping at permanence, at solidity to the body. But if we try to find the essence that we're grasping at, it's unfindable. And just as our body is impermanent, changing from moment to moment, so is any other phenomena that we could point to also impermanent, changing from moment to moment. Similarly, the self that is designated in dependence upon the body and the other aggregates shares the characteristics of its causes: impermanent, fluctuating, changing from moment to moment. It goes deeper than that, because the I, the self, it is designated, as we said, it is impermanent, in a state of flux. Why is this? Because the causes and conditions from which the I emerges are impermanent, in a state of flux, momentary.
It's a tradition. It's a part. The one in it is in it. You know, the G so Lenin for a long to pass passion. You won't be able to.
Because these causes are rooted in karma and affliction, and that is what is causing that change from moment to moment. Until we achieve freedom from karma and affliction, we will not be able to have the lasting, stable peace that we are seeking. With this human body, this human intelligence, the facilities that we have right now, we have every single condition that we need to be able to achieve that emancipation, that freedom from karma and affliction. We want true welfare for ourselves. We must seek that liberation from karma and affliction. And if we want others to be able to achieve any kind of meaningful welfare, they also must be freed from karma and affliction. So with this sort of goal in mind, I am going to engage in our activities today. And to be able to achieve success in those, I am going to request blessings. So we'll make the supplications and requests. Geshe is like, are you relaxed, Ngodrup? I guess so. I'm just very frustrated by our technology, but hopefully that didn't show in the meditation. Let us continue. Yeah, so Geshe said, you know, his goal here really, whatever happens, is for the classes to bring all of you happiness. So he and I always try to proceed happily, no matter what is going on. Yeah, so this is my duty, so I will do that. Oh, yeah, that was it. Yong da ba zo be song ge ba dang sha su den ba de wa she ba de shi ke ba je du we wa gyo wa na me wa no do mi na ki de wa so ge cho de gyo wa sha gyo tu a na son ze chen kyo su ji Dunpa chomdende deje sheba da chomba yanda ba zobe sanje sheba dan shasu denpa dewa sheba shete chemba shebu dewe karo gyorwa rana
Meba, Lada Minangi Demba, Sonje Chondende, Jawa, Shaja, Lupala, Chasu, Cheda, Kyasu, Chiri. Venba Chondende, Deshe Sheba, Drachomba, Yang Tapa, Zobe, Sangye, Sheba, Dang, Shasu, Demba, Ewa, Sheba, Shiden, Chemba, Chewa, Dewe, Kalo, Jor, Nana, Meba, Lada, Minangi, Temba, Sangye, Chondende, Jawa, Shakya, Tupala, Chaselo, Cheda, Kyasu, Chi, So, Jo, So, me, bo, ro, o, shi, du, o, idam guru ratna medala kamirayadaya. Refuge in bodhicitta. So what Geshe would like to do today is establish all of us in a visualization before we recite the words of refuge in bodhicitta. So also just another thing he wanted to mention in terms of this preliminary meditation that we did on the 4 placements of mindfulness, especially the close placement of mindfulness on the body. One of the ways we can do this is have this attitude of casual observation without attachment to bring forth a feeling of equanimity. But there's also a way to practice the 4 close placements of mindfulness that emphasizes really kind of a scrutinizing examination for bringing forth wisdom. Kunjung Denpa Dang? So, in fact, when we use this 4 close placements of mindfulness meditation in the fullest sense, the practitioner can actually come to a realization of 2 of the 4 noble truths, true sufferings and true origins. And it is said that by also examining close placement of mindfulness on the body, one understands true sufferings in the fullest sense. And then by close placement of mindfulness on the feelings, one is able to understand true origins in a full sense. And then in this way, one is able to develop a really full comprehension of the way karma and affliction are operating, actually. So we see actually when pleasant feelings arise, attachment arises connected with those. When unpleasant feelings arise, aversion arises in connection with those. Even when feelings that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant, neutral feelings arise, a kind of boredom can be experienced. And in this way, those reactions compel us into the accumulation of karma, maybe wholesome, often unwholesome.
다 다슈 준비 때에서 보기 니바지고 그러마도 다 쳐도 바로 왔어.
Yeah, and really to kind of really examine feelings, right? The best time to really observe them is when those feelings are prominent, right? When we can easily identify them.
다 리를 따지 린 논데레 션데레 리치네 코로 다 다가로 코로 네스 코로 라바들 리바시 시바 존에 만도야 될라 소화도 보기 그래요.
But if we're just observing the body, observing the outside of the body, the inside of the body, observing the various parts of the body, right? We want to do this maybe in a bit of a relaxed way without paying particular attention to feeling.
가를 따기나 대 코로 가세 시고도 다는 자체 도야지 세례원 주요하레스.
We want to observe the various parts of the body with a sort of calm awareness that is able to perceive them as clearly as possible.
오노징아도 공부하는 공부 자기도 와서 공부 예뻐 보고요. 요거 보고요. 다든지 전 거리 보고요. 공부하는 거 자기로 와서 공부 예뻐 보고요. 공부 요거도 보고요. 된다 리바서야지 됐어.
And another way of cultivating the mindfulness of the body is with the practice of walking meditation. For example, thinking I'm lifting my right foot and placing it in front. Then I'm lifting up my left foot and placing it in front. And then thinking my foot is touching the ground. This is another way to cultivate that mindfulness.
다 대기일라 마시 빨리 고티 요가레스 당기 일다 지와라와스 오라발 따와티가 소와 잡을 헬레 대추야레 되네 이나 제일라 마시네 대바 텔레 요가레스.
And so in terms of using this mindfulness of the body as a mode of relaxation, just that attitude of casual observation, Geshe mentioned that this is good for relaxation, but it is not the best type of the meditation. However, this observation of the body is better than just not thinking of anything at all in terms of developing something beyond relaxation.
다 고름이 중요해요. 이제 대시오 자체가 중요해요. 일단 저거요.
Yeah.
아니 전부도 싫어할 때는 배도요.
Because even with this preliminary type of meditation, we are taking the body as an object of focus in our meditation and holding that within our awareness. This will help us to develop the factors of mindfulness and introspection. And in this way, because the mindfulness and the introspection are being honed, they act as an antidote to ignorance, not powerful antidote to ignorance, but there is some measure of antidote to ignorance.
다 최소 대세 제만이자 세 제만이자 이거 다 여보 더 제잖아. 하고서 와서는 로델로 배도 요할 때는 좋은 구대 시고라 해야지 가네. 이거 알았어.
Lamden dene so
좋은 구대.
godin. And close placement of mindfulness on the mind, right? A more challenging one. This is said to help us to develop an understanding of true paths, but especially it is able to help us develop true cessations.
자식도 구대고 거로 와서 이나요 다 어다른 구딘 말을 로데오 거래 되는 구대오 거래 해서 이나잖아.
Gokden dang lamden. Yene so gokden. So true paths and true cessations can sort of be understood through this close placement of mindfulness on the mind, but especially through cessations in particular.
다 정확한가 로고야 봐. 세고로고 로지피도 하고 좀만 다 든지 좀 여보 지라체소나. 정확한가 밤에와도야 그냥 여봐. 하고서라 저리 하고서나 다 그런 군 정확한가 맨로 여봐. 하고서는 구대 시골에.
So how does this work? This is interesting. So how does this work? How does the close placement of mindfulness on the mind help us to realize true cessations? Well, when we place our awareness on the mind, eventually distractions will fall away. We will come to understand that the mind's true nature is pure luminosity. There are the defilements there, the afflictions there, but once those are cleared away, the mind's true nature can be revealed and suffering will cease. Hence, this close placement of mindfulness on the mind can help us realize true cessations.
더 정말 강가 그럼 샤쇼로 다 이해자소나 근데 세가 또 많이 된 거대 사촌 그래서
And when all of the defilements or stains have been completely cleared away, and the ultimate nature of the mind is revealed, wisdom, realizing emptiness unfolds, and cessation of suffering is achieved.
그래서 어디에 다다 자치 때문에 때문에 그는 녀무 비치 뭐주지 녀무시 그 간데스도 우자 간데스도 계속 뭐라 되게
Sorry, Kari.
치테는 제니요 그는 녀무 비치 뭐주 비치
Yeah. And when the close placement of mindfulness on phenomena is developed by the practitioner, what understanding can come from that? An understanding between the completely afflicted class of phenomena and the completely purified class of phenomena. And through being able to understand both of those, then one knows what to take up and what to abandon.
그래서 메타이 어다 들리지래 소소시도 가리데가 요나 저 그러셔라요 말이스 세테만 유자칸 로데 유아가라 체요나 아니 로데 걸 판도야
Sentiment
이니 벤지 응고데 자카마스
And so Geshe also wanted to say there is some flexibility in how we approach this practice. So if we're meditating on the nature of the mind, or if we're doing close placement of mindfulness on the mind, if approaching that from through the lens of true paths makes more sense to you than approaching it through the lens of true cessations, that is perfectly fine, right? You do what works for you.
그래서 어다 뭐냐 못아서 다 어다 뒤에서 와서 어다 대만이자 잘라 때네 소데 또도 전체면 ዝ바데 파피야래 소 파피기야
가리즌파?
소데 다
Oh, yeah. And so from realizing these 4 close placements of mindfulness, we are able to completely clear away the 4 mistaken conceptions, perceiving the unclean as clean, perceiving what lacks permanence as permanent. Kalichenilata. Mitsamula Tsangwachima.
야는 좀 대화 많이 말로 대화 아니 따바 많이 말로 따바 야 다들 좀 많이 말로 다들 좀 받아 다들 좀
Sadujaba Shiba.
야 시바 다들 좀 받으셔서 왔어 소데 따
So Geshe is using the short form for these 4, which I'm not clear on. So I'm asking him to say it in the same way. So it's grasping at what is unclean as clean. Tambudi, nipadi kariju.
대화 많이 말로 대화 비다바 많이 말로 대화
Grasping at what is in the nature of suffering as being in the nature of happiness. Grasping at what is impermanent as having permanence. And grasping at what lacks self as having a self.
그래서 어다 뒤에서 대마절은 주야도 다 로루빠지 파피고 도왔어
So through cultivating these 4 noble truths, or these 4 Arya truths, we are also able to refute these 4 misconceptions.
어이다 개자모면 뒤에서 다 레레치네 대쇼스 그냥도 세세시다이스
So now we will meditate on refuge and bodhicitta.
라마세는 예도세는 다 이거 유도 간리차 라마 간리차다 뭐 연발라 엄바데다와 샤자타와 우미도리아보 시다스
So in this visualization of the jewel all-in-one, we understand that all of the lamas, the spiritual teachers, are present. All of the yidams, the tutelary deities are present in this single form of Buddha Shakyamuni appearing in front of us.
야에니 파마니소 시빌로아 주스지주즈 nomba 메인 nomba지 강에서 소소 강이죠.
So then that's in the space in front of us. Behind us, on other side, we have our father and our mother. And then behind them is a vast assembly of the 6 types of beings of samsara, but in human form, so that we know that they are just like us and experience suffering in exactly the way that we do.
Jiba. Country is so to be on Bash had the Danish governments because of us.
I'm thinking of all this suffering and the complications of samsara. We bring forth a feeling of fear or dread about it.
Oh, so in it, and then searching the vision and kind of see.
I think right now I'm a human being and many around me are humans, but what if based on some karma we had to be reborn in the lower suffering realms? And even in the higher realms as humans, asuras, demigods, devas, gods, even they are experiencing so many. All of the experiences of suffering those beings are affected come from their unwholesome karma. And yet, all of that suffering that's experienced and the causes of that suffering, the unwholesome karma, is not permanent, right? It is momentary in the aspect of changing, impermanent. If we understand that, we understand it's not necessary that all these beings continually abide in a state of suffering. In fact, there is a path through which they can be emancipated, freed from that suffering. Based upon the teaching of the Buddha, they have a path forward, a variety of methods through which they can overcome their problems and achieve a state of complete freedom. Understanding this, bring forth a mind of confidence or faith in the Buddha. Have faith in these qualities and in the enlightened activities of the Buddha. I have complete confidence in the Buddha jewel. Think about that. Until myself, until others, until everyone, every last one of those 6 beings within samsara is completely freed, I will continuously go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Think the Buddha is so pleased with our aspiration. The powerful countless light rays and nectars emanate from his holy body and enter our crown and the crown of all the sentient beings that we visualize surrounding us. From receiving these lights and nectar, all of their sufferings of the body, their physical suffering, and all of their mental illnesses and suffering are completely cleared away.
Chaba hale, chaba chimbo kala, chaba sizi, tona kiwo chaba was, the muji chipanda tsubeze.
And think that the feeling of the sentient beings as they receive the lights and nectar from the Buddha is similar to the feeling of the beings in a place that's been in a very long drought and finally experiences a cooling rain.
Lichikane, senjikane, kanga, kawatowa no, jiga mabachino ta, shu chimbo pain, mate, keni kanga tendo.
And think that those lights and nectars, they completely flush out the unwholesome karma that acts as the causes of that mental and physical suffering, just as if you took a high-powered hose and were able to, with high-pressure water, completely clear out a blocked pipe. All of those problems are just flushed away.
Rongwe nyaya to manga lidia se kiva. From don't die, since you do that, then you lidia se kiva shit or so.
Just as through this meditation, I have achieved the causes of a happy body and mind, so too may all sentient beings have the causes of a happy body.
I am somebody person of Mindu, to order to the since you do near such morning that head of the head, positive repeating the task. So you come to the Koro to one which talk shall be so we start from yourselves.
I think I want to take this beyond a visualization. I want every last sentient being to be able to achieve
You Koro to one which you compost in
the exact same realization that the Buddha Bhagavan himself achieved. For this purpose, may I achieve enlightenment and lead all beings to the state Buddha.
We are Sunday in the Tandoli in the rich. Only should you say to Yara since you just do. He's an answer to measure and then to
If even beings in the animal realm, if even beings of all of the three unfortunate realms are able to bring forth this wish of bodhicitta to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of others, I can definitely achieve it. So we'll pause there.
What that there was your was Ichig Deva, Tony Deva, Ichig Deva, Niende Deva, Stevano, she changed the Niende Deva self.
And so out of the three types of faith, it is this actualizing faith that is the most powerful.
Or that Niende Deva sends us when you get Deva, don't Deva Maros, you corrupt of Mujita, all I go to years of that Deva.
And that manifesting faith is that faith that thinks just exactly what the Buddha achieved, I also must achieve exactly that. So I call it manifesting or actualizing.
Oh, yeah, that's what the young answer did.
Listen, so let us turn to our text.
That's our need a little of us.
And so the text in its root form is actually very brief.
자, 친지마도 다 남기네 전도요 말레스.
And so in terms of that, we've covered sort of just two of the points here.
년도 땡지 치템바 도모 년도 달라 스타로리 때도마 자자와 즉시 그런 간주 두는 땡지 대이 사르트 뭐.
So we are, if you turn to the root text, the 7 points of mind training, the preliminaries, first train in the preliminaries.
그래서와 단대발 바로와. 어다 대용었더니 어다 다가로 용 것도 간저와 가서 제제도 좀 봐도 자된 거 사성와.
나도 단다디.
나나면 봐 용도 봐 주비 쇼주 토반대비 고서 노지 쇼주주의 세시네. 그저도 대도비 쇼주지 세 건발람베바 샤기테스.
So if you turn to page 1 of the commentary, individuals who seek to attain unsurpassable, complete, and perfect awakening must set their minds upon enlightenment and then exert themselves in the cultivation of both relative and ultimate bodhicitta, as Arya Nagarjuna said.
It is good.
This is like, don't rush up the Nagarjuna just yet.
어다 나나면 봐 용도 봐 주비 쇼주 토반대기지나 이니 미리 쇼주지 세트 시그레스 그was.
So what's saying is that if we are one who strives for awakening, for enlightenment, then necessarily we must bring forth both relative and ultimate bodhicitta.
어다 나나면 봐 용도 봐 주비 쇼주 세 손지가 공부세요 알아봤어.
So the state of unsurpassed and complete enlightenment is the state of Buddhahood, right?
다 손지가 공부하잖아. 니네지나 아시고서기나. 로델 따와이나 손지 공부만 더 다문도. 예델 따와이나 델레 좋더네 다문도. 스테니드 인제면 손은 똑같아스.
And as we aspire to achieve this state of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete and perfect Buddhahood, what awareness do we have to have behind that striving? That there is no superior way to achieve one's own welfare than through achieving Buddhahood, that there is no superior way to work for the welfare of others than by achieving Buddhahood. And if someone were to ask, how is one's own welfare achieved by achieving complete enlightenment? If you work for many, many eons to achieve your own welfare, your own liberation from samsara for yourself alone, yes, So it's like when you achieve that state of liberation, there is enlightenment, which is the other shore, pardon me. When you achieve that state of liberation, it's like getting halfway through the ocean without reaching the other shore. And if you think about it like that doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? So in fact, it's said in the scripture that one who aspires for liberation for themselves, they're eventually going to have to reach that state of enlightenment to complete the journey. But it's almost as if they get to that island in the middle, and then they're going to have to go and circle all the way back and start from the beginning to get to that state of complete enlightenment. So it doesn't make sense to progress that way. And so people might argue, well, but you said, wait a second, you said that he or she is getting halfway across that ocean to the other shore of enlightenment, and certainly halfway across the ocean seems better than getting nowhere at all. Well, what we're saying here is the one who aspires to Buddhahood, to complete enlightenment from the beginning, he or she makes the journey all the way across to the ocean. And in that way, they progress much more quickly than the one who reaches that middle place of liberation, has to circle back to the aspiration and cross the ocean again to Buddhahood. Mishibe, Gyuji. So, of course, these Shravakas, the hearers, And the Pratyeka Buddhas, the solitary realizers, these are exalted spiritual states, right? These beings have achieved liberation. But it is said that they still have 4 causes of unknowingness within their continuums. And because those 4 unknowingnesses are still present, and imprints of unknowingness and ignorance are still present, right? They aren't able to reach that final state of realization. They are held back. And so why is Geshe saying this to you now? He's answering that question that he posed. What do you get out of aspiring to Buddhahood for the benefit of all? So this is from the perspective of one's own welfare, why one needs to reach full enlightenment. And of course, once the state of Buddhahood is achieved, then when we speak about the welfare of others, the Buddha's capacity through their holy body, speech, and mind to show miraculous emanations of body, miraculous emanations of speech, miraculous emanations of mind, and so forth, they can work towards the welfare of sentient beings in a really kind of unfathomable way. Yeah, and so that is what is actually meant in the Heart Sutra when it talks about the Bodhisattva, the great being, right? It talks about the Bodhisattva, the great being. So the Bodhisattva talks about the part of, it's the hidden meaning, right? Is talking about the part of enlightenment where one's own welfare is achieved. And the great being, the Mahasattva, is talking about the point where enlightenment helps one work perfectly for the welfare of others. So then what is a Buddha from the perspective of this discussion? It's not so difficult, actually. A Buddha is one who has completely cleared away all of the faults as well as the imprints left behind by those faults and perfectly brought forth, perfected, all of the positive mental qualities that could be perfected. And based upon cultivating the path a little bit ourselves, we can see that those coarser faults, those are something that we can clear away or at least diminish. So if the path is brought to its fruition, then every last fault and the latencies can be completely cleared away. And what allows us to cultivate towards Buddhahood? What is the door to the Mahayana path? It is the door of bodhicitta, the door that allows us to enter that path. So if you have to enter a house, right, you're going to have to do that through the door, right? That's the only way to be able to get inside. I was just kidding. I was saying, well, if you had a bulldozer, you could make a hole in the side of the house. Geshe didn't find it funny. I was just joking. Sorry. But I reminded him of a story, so maybe there was some benefit to saying that. Yeah. So at that time, Geshe was the resident teacher at Maitreya Institute in the Netherlands, and we would get usually a holiday, like in the wintertime. Chini. Geshe is trying to get me to take some responsibility for this one, but I'm like, I think it was your friend Tempa. But anyways, whether it was Geshe and myself or Geshe and his friend Tenpa, Geshe at Geshe's house, they have 2 small dogs, Tibetan terriers. And those dogs are used to living outside, but somehow when we were drinking tea, the dogs always want to come in and spend time with the people. And so the door was shut. And so we closed the dogs in the dining room, I guess.
아침에비가 키때 노력고 되니 조금 말해서 뭐든 뭐도 말서
Yeah,
코션 시때 이보면 기고 강가산이 여기 처음부터 대사를
And so those dogs, they got really nervous, right? Because they're used to being around people all the time. So like after we left and went to bed, they kind of panicked and they started to try to chew through the door to be able to get out.
안가서 시에서 와서 빈자 되는 시기래 그래서
Yeah, how does
근데 다 체크 전에서 빈자 되는 다 손이 그다 거시는 다 그러와서 거시는 여기 제다지지 않았어 건서 여기 어떻게 제모들 내는데 와서 진짜 제모 썼는데 가서 가게
This is like, good to tell you guys, but anyways, Geshe-la's cousin came back the next day and he was afraid of getting in trouble. So he didn't say anything. But when the cousin came into the kitchen, he thought that, he said, it looks like the rat problem that we had has come back and those rats have chewed through the bottom of the door. Now, Geshe-la didn't confirm or deny. He simply didn't say anything.
계속 붙여 거기서 가서 계속 붙여서 와서 거기서 계속 뭐시서 어떻게 드는 게 맞았는지 거기서
Yeah. And so they were telling Geshe-la's uncle, right, Kensu Rinpoche, some of you know him, that, it looks like the rat problem has come back.
가서 가게 나면 진짜 이 맛이
And so Geshe-la, he didn't lie, right? He didn't say that that's what happened, but he also didn't correct that perception.
So
Geshe said this embarrassing story that he told you all about himself. It came from like my meaningless comment about putting the bulldozer through the side and getting in the door. You know.
어다든지 고세를 하고 살아와 고세를 가지고 될 빼레스 대바치비 고테 존주지 세러와스 나로서 고디 노르레 자소나 노르레스 그래 대마도 쇼로 요하와스
So to get in, right, to get into this path of Mahayana practice, it is really only that one door. It is through that door of bodhicitta, and we can't do it any other way.
대바치 몰은 주비고 어느 때야 답이 있고 어느 야 뭐는 주비고 뭐는 주비고
So there are different sorts of this analogy of the door is used in many different ways, right? We talk about the door to liberation. We talk about the door to the Mahayana path. The door to Tantra and the door to the path to Tantra.
then 공개 거를 유거를 조주세 권하고 시지아지 매미치 같이 뭐지
And there are some words in the Lamrim Chemo, in the great treatise of the stages of the path by Lama Tsongkhapa, which says that there is no
then 가완주바이나요 then 네즈니 니를 가완주바이나요 유거대 조주세 지보이
니든 소카레랑 돈
니 말해 니데
So Lama Tsongkhapa in the Lamrim Chemo, he speaks about only one door through which to enter two paths. The door to the Mahayana path and the door to the path of secret mantra. He makes the argument that the door for both of these paths is actually this mind of bodhicitta. But to be honest, if we posit the only door to the entry to the path of Tantra, to Vajrayana as bodhicitta, we could run into some problems. So Geshe-la said, some lamas have said it as we've stated. So he would very respectfully propose an alternative way of thinking about it. So the way that Geshe-la would say it is similar to what Lama Tsongkhapa says in the Lamrim Chemo, which is the path to Mahayana Sutra is bodhicitta. Sorry, the door to the path of Mahayana Sutra is bodhicitta, and the door to the path of Mahayana Tantra is bodhicitta. Yes? But that bodhicitta is a bit different.
小句是写几把的，是一把的。
Yeah, yeah.
因为小句写的你把结局都可能在不跟绕呀，是吧？
Lockdown dodi.
哦，
So that bodhicitta is there in this example as the door to both the Mahayana Tantra path and the Mahayana Sutra path. But the strength of the bodhicitta is a little bit different.
意思嘛？我当我当这说，他按照刚我人就别过小句写的是嘛的，我人就别过我的嘞，我写。
So what's missing though is the path to mantra, the path to Vajrayana can't just be bodhicitta. The path to Vajrayana has to be also abhisheka, empowerment or consecration.
我托办的就对我了修吧，因为我了修吧嘛意思。
So based upon the empowerment, one enters the door to Tantra. However, one has not yet opened the door to the path of Tantra. One has entered the door only to Tantra.
我了就把了我给他们小句写的可个嘞。
To enter the path of Tantra, one needs to have received empowerment, but also have brought forth an uncommon mind of bodhicitta. That uncommon mind of bodhicitta is the path, is the door to the path of Tantra.
我在这里，他把天那个落不几万万元吧，不是讲不给吧，几万万元吧，可电波机来说啦，他不是那，但是他比落了就把的。
And in terms of the door to the path of liberation, it is that striving, the mind striving towards liberation.
民主个落几万万元吧，是让这个人，他把天那个落几万万元吧，是让这个人。
So the uncommon mind which strives towards liberation, you could also make an argument here to say the uncommon mind of renunciation or definite emergence.
我当时马里把的没话说，他们对送别落几万万元吧，是让这个样的，真的，那是么样的？
Also the mind that strives to completely eradicate the ignorance grasping at the self, understanding that this is the root of all problems, you could also say that is the door to the path of liberation. Yes, so many different angles through which we can look at it. Ningje Chenpo, Topane, through bringing forth an uncontrived great compassion, one activates the Mahayana lineage. So there's this idea of a rik, which is like lineage, which is what the translation means, but think of it more as potential, actually. So activating the Mahayana potential. And so Geshe said he's mentioned before many times that there are the 4 factors that block the activation of the lineage or the activation of potential. So you may ask then, when is the Mahayana lineage, the Mahayana potential activated? At the point that great compassion is realized within the mind, the Mahayana lineage is activated. So if one is one who truly strives towards enlightenment, then as the text says, you must exert yourself in the cultivation of both relative and ultimate bodhicitta. As Arya Nagarjuna said, if we ourselves and all the world wish for unsurpassed enlightenment, its basis is bodhicitta. Stable as the king of mountains, compassion reaching out in all directions, and wisdom that transcends duality. So Geshe believes that this is Nagarjuna's precious garland. Actually, does that sound right, Marjorie? I know that Marjorie likes this text. Not sure, not sure. Okay, just thought I would ask because I know you like that text a lot.
This one? So
Geshe is having a doubt. He's doubting if this comes from the precious garland or from root of wisdom, but it's definitely from one of those two. Yeah, so if we ourselves, so that's talking about the I, the self. And the world in this sense is not physical. The world is referring to all the sentient beings. So it's like ourself and all sentient beings. So wish for unsurpassed enlightenment. So we understand that the word Jangchub enlightenment, right? Bodhi, right? this can be understood also in the sense of that the enlightenment of the solitary realizer, right? One who goes for liberation. But that's not unsurpassed enlightenment. Unsurpassed enlightenment here means Buddhahood.
톨로 더봐. 안에 타바 더봐. 하고서 오다 되지 가기가 니가 쇼주 더야. Yes.
So enlightenment, without saying unsurpassed, if we just say enlightenment, that can speak about having achieved the path of seeing and then liberation, right, for oneself. That is also referred to as enlightenment, but it is not the unsurpassed enlightenment.
건강도 또 많이 가디에서도 또 소나 니가 쇼주시 더 바래.
So actually, this unsurpassed enlightenment, Geshe would propose that the sort of twin to the unsurpassed enlightenment is the surpassable enlightenment. And that is when one achieves the wisdom realizing emptiness for oneself alone. That is a type of enlightenment, but a
니가 쇼주.
temporary enlightenment. Geshe refers to it as a temporary enlightenment.
그래서 오다 타바 더바 소소 지보기 때문에 타바 조 더바 이나 니가 쇼주 더 바라 왔어.
So achieving mere liberation for oneself alone is an enlightenment, but it is not unsurpassed. It is a temporary
너
enlightenment.
대지 강가 쇼주 이래 때는 라메 쇼주 말해. 라메 쇼주에서 디 고나메 비그다 쇼주 제라 라메 쇼주 시리가.
So unsurpassed enlightenment, it makes it really clear that the enlightenment of a Buddha, that Buddhahood that we're talking about, that's an enlightenment that is supreme. It cannot be surpassed by any other type of enlightenment.
라나 메비 쇼주에서 고마 메비 쇼주 시리가.
Yes, it is an enlightenment where there's nothing beyond that. That is the fullest experience of enlightenment that there can be.
라메 쇼주 톤데나 사고도 사사 손지 톤데나 시리가레스. 나 데이 자와 데라 아서 그 아래 데이 자와 쇼주에서 롱자보 따테 스리 자보로는 저라 치모도 요한 왔어.
So its basis is bodhicitta, stable as the king of mountains. So Geshe said when we speak about the king of mountains, Ri Gyalpo Rijap, right? We're talking about that, depending on how you view Buddhist cosmology, I guess, mythical or real, the Meru, the Mount Meru.
다 대지 따바때 뭐 할래도 말이 되는 아주 파탄 때도 가고 치모도 요한 왔어.
And actually, even Mount Meru itself is not like completely stable and unmoving, but to ordinary beings, because of its kind of magnificent height, it appears that way.
오다 쇼주시 세테 누지지 그러마도 대행을 당하로스 되고 대지 춘주지 부르셔지 답이 세시. 부르기시.
Burugishi?
부르가무지 와로 부시.
Bushi, yeah.
부시 싱아무지요.
Chemakarogi Yongye.
어때 부시 될 빠빠데 누지 쇼주시 세테 세야레스.
Loso.
마토니엘라.
So, but before reaching that stable king of mountains, bodhicitta, we have a bodhicitta that is just a little bit of a taste. It's said to be like when you bite that first surface of the sugar cane. You haven't yet come to its essence. It's a bit like that.
This one, there's a matter that depending on what in a chuji there's a matter was. Papa no la there's
So yeah, if you chew on the sort of outer part of the sugarcane plant, you only get a little bit of a hint of sweetness, right? You haven't comprehended its richness.
다 쇼주세 때다 데레스 다 저로서 아니 손지가 마 손지서 마 소멸레지기라.
Yeah.
저로서 제가 몽에네 때 그거요나. 빠빠들 거 코마는 노르는 이보된 듀스.
So do not be deceived. You who seek full enlightenment, do not be deceived merely by the taste of bodhicitta, like on the outer part of the sugarcane, but instead seek the essence, the heart of the sugarcane, where the true richness of the juice lies.
바로 신비로는 문안 듀스 기존의 신념부터 요아레스 로시 몽에네 때 노르로 요아르다.
Yes. So the beautiful taste is not something that can be experienced only by going on the surface. We must go to the very heart.
어단디스 알레서와 어데레. 야데 저거 슈타 튜비 니제도 세르다 내는거 니지질레 뭐도와 슈타 튜비 세레 쇼도 탑 넘에 바다 생제 요절을 미비가 니지 침부치 생이아레스.
So the next one, compassion reaching out in all directions. That means not a compassion for some, but a compassion for all. So reaching out in all directions really means a compassion that is referencing every single sentient being.
어다 미치볼라요 세리야 말에 어다 대학교에서 로아리 주고 생제 요절을 차비게 다 니지 침부치 매나 어다 미야 말레스.
And not just human beings, right? All 6 types of beings within samsara, when the compassion is reaching every single one of them, that is when true bodhicitta can be brought forth.
다 대니 슈 쳇쳇 비다 본도 하셔발라 니라면 대 이실라 서 돈이 두비 이메 두비 시라 돈이 두비 시라 생각하레스.
And wisdom that transcends duality. So we can say wisdom that transcends duality. Geshe said here, you can also understand that it is talking about wisdom realizing emptiness as well.
다 야 손주제 쇼바 니지 제바 추실라 소바 가르 여바 이나 소스도 할 레비 비다 보지 하래 되니 이나요. 내가 노신 넣어야 되라. 소송 내가 노신 뭔가 야 슈처럼 넣어야 되라. 돈이 두비 시라 되면 로통이야.
Love is wonderful. Compassion is wonderful. Patience is wonderful. Bodhicitta is wonderful. But that wished for state of unsurpassed enlightenment cannot be achieved through those alone. Wisdom realizing emptiness must be realized.
뭔가 여보ችን 로야 된다. 바체 강가 바 좀와서거나 다 돈이 두비 시라 좀와서 말했어.
You can think of it as we're walking along this path, right, that we entered through that door. But there are all kinds of obstacles, maybe stones or garbage or whatever that's blocking us. It's only wisdom that is going to be able to clear that path of obstacles. It doesn't matter how great the road that reaches the destination is. If it's not cleared of obstacles, you're not going to be able to get where you want to go. So we have moved along. We have covered Nagarjuna's verse. So we will stop after Nagarjuna's verse today, and then from next time we will go to the great precious single divine Lord Atisha. We'll start there. So we said that really to clear the path of obstacles, we need the wisdom realizing emptiness. To have the full extent of wisdom realizing emptiness, we understand that this has to be infused with dependent arising. So he's speaking so long. Okay. Sorry, anyways. I was just trying to say what he said, but anyway. Okay, so we are going to verse 24, I believe. Rangji mela chiwe go lame tenshin gyugyushi. Yeah. So we are on verse 24. If by the very name of dependent arising, gateway supreme to know self-nature is asserted, how will they be led to that noble path that pleases you, that incomparable highway well traveled by exalted beings?
So the
path that will really lead us to understanding that there is no self-nature, in other words, no inherent existence of the self, it is that path of lamdi tenjung jetwa, that path of dependent arising. Sorry. The leading factor along that path to that understanding is dependent arising. It's like the guide on the path. There is no better guide on the path to that realization than dependent arising. Yeah. However, some people merely hearing dependent arising, then they'll say that there is some self-nature, there is some inherent existence, because things that exist arise dependently. So that's a pitfall. And then you might get a little bit discouraged because you're saying that things are dependent arising, but that still means that they are existing. So how can the path of dependent arising lead anywhere other than that understanding?
배트가 계속 좌사했어.
So they're saying that how can you say that if dependent arising is leading you on the path, dependent arising of objects which are coming into existence, if you say that they have no self-nature, no inherent existence at all, how can dependent arising lead you anywhere to any other understanding?
그래서 알레 디도한테 이제 뒤로서. 그래 이제 자서대 체지 순게데
디조스.
본인가로 만들라고 그래서이.
Yeah, 조스.
오야. 그래서
Yeah.
다 파주노지 레데빈 중어 다도 자체바 체지 지비 로존들 타고케는 쪼아샤.
So now we come to verse number 25. So actually, the way that this has been translated is he's done 2 verses as 1 paragraph. So we're actually at the next part of that paragraph. How will they be led to that noble path that pleases you, that incomparable highway well traveled by the exalted beings?
그래서 다 당기들 지발했어. 파주노지 서 파바들 다니 대 바바 혼자 바바 성주 다 대제 바바 써요. 왔어.
So when we talk here about the exalted beings, normally we would say the Aryas, right? We can talk about 3 types of Aryas, right? There are the hearers, Nyentu.
혼자 아니 성주세마 바바.
There are hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas within that class of Arya beings.
그거 다 가시가 니티 바바도 혼자 바바 돈이 또 그거 말했어요. 할때 대 말했어. 괜찮아.
Some schools are actually saying that to reach the state of a hearer, a Shravaka, or a Pratyeka Buddha, you don't have to have that direct realization of wisdom, realizing emptiness, but we are not holding that, right? We hold that that is incorrect.
파방년에 간디지 이나니 파방년에 차차서는 단지 유시비 돈이 나와 다들 또 타와랬어. 예서도 또 그거 알았어.
Because what we are stating is that for being to become an Arya, an exalted or superior being, they must accordingly be able to see things as they truly are, which is that wisdom realizing emptiness. So it's necessary for them to achieve that. So there's a lot of debate about that point, but the meaning here is that an Arya being 통이 토피시럽 토켄디 agbarestonda.
매명에서도 도경에서도 파바이나.
Yeah.
사실에서는 파바이나 또 많이 참모등에서도 또 가마를 걸어서 내가 노지 지도는
거야. So some are arguing that the Arya, the Arya or the superior being, they don't have to perceive the most subtle wisdom realizing emptiness, but we are holding that this is incorrect.
파주 노지레 대변 중어 다도 자체바 사당 당기세야 되래. 아니 야 파파 강가로로 따와 타두는 로야가로 녜네 대 땡줄라 되는 거고요.
So what this is saying is that incomparable highway well traveled by the exalted beings, if you want to be an exalted being, an Arya, you have to follow this path leading in that direct realization of emptiness.
다 알아서 생각하면 다리 지금들은 땡주 될라 되네. 다야주 땡주 되래. 저기 땡주 될라 되는 로지 요아래. 아주 잘 대봐이나. 근데 다 니까지 집에 다 매반다.
So those who misunderstood, as the previous part of the paragraph indicates, who think that dependent arising, if things arise dependently, that must mean that they exist, at least in part. That is not getting them to that destination of the wisdom realizing emptiness. So how could they be able to travel along that incomparable highway of the exalted beings? The very supreme instruction of the Buddha explains that it is actually through understanding dependent arising in a way that leads us to that realization that lacks inherent existence, that is that supreme well-traveled highway.
어때래 다 자원으로 매스 치카시 매치 그 정도 이제 매지 파스 라게야 뭐지
로스
홍바 땡주 조시 땡주 동배 조시에서 칸이라라 연달아 손도 동가.
So when we say dependent arising assisted by emptiness, emptiness assisted by dependent arising, part of what we're studying here is so that something immediately comes into mind, so that we understand Yeah. So how does it assist? So we have to say emptiness assisted by dependent arising assisted by emptiness, and think, how is that assisting working? So if you want to recite a few mantras, wonderful, recite a few mantras, but actually more important would be to recite dependent arising underpinned by emptiness, emptiness underpinned by dependent arising. So as we recite, what happens is we start to think about it. And as we start to think about it, we start to be able to get some understanding.
시바도 못 와봐 대지래 산노지라게 요레스 시바도 못 와봐 이보도 못 와봐
셰파스나 응어보 조도.
이보도 오다라라스 맞아 오다 주시에스 다트 미레라고 요 말레스
So understanding this relationship of how they assist each other is not the easiest thing.
아그서를 세를 샤야 돼 지샤거는 뒤에 주시에는 연다도 샤 토거래 된다 주시야 됐어요 공바소노 도게 되니 뒤로 로바소니라
Yeah.
연주 세를 샤 토바
Mhm.
연주 세를 샤게 되니 동바 세를 샤 토바
Yeah.
주시에서 맞 괜찮지
So we want to unfold this assisting relationship so that when emptiness comes into the mind, 톰바니 담볼렙디 데네
원래 사람 동바니 세를 샤요 되니 세를 제요 되니
sorry. 근데 거기는
동바니 세를 손으로 도용 거로 왔어
Yeah.
손으로 도게 되니 다가 오기 연주 보게 세를 내게
Ale. So not meditating. So that when the moment that one thinks about emptiness, one is also taking into account dependent arising. From the moment when one is thinking about dependent arising, one is also taking into account emptiness.
변나 메도디가 로마타 그래 메도디 도용 거래 세 대지 뭐 깨자 말했어 로도데
Yeah.
말아와지네 스테소노도 그마도
Loso. So it's not like just seeing the flower of the petal, the petal of the flower and thinking that the flower is the petal, right? It's not like that.
집에 된다도 대 통문이 왔어 메도들 대 도게 되는 메도드 통자 라치고 왔어 이나 된 로도 대 기바르 말했어
So it's not the same like that.
아까서 나로서 응고 도서는 나로서 통자라 그래 내 노지 땡주도 또 좋으셔야 돼 왜서나
Wait. Kali.
나로서 응고 도서나 도서나
So,
나로서 뭐 통자라 그래 왔어
통성.
통자라 그래 왔어
Yeah.
된 로도 대 기바 말해
It's not like seeing the face of a person and saying, I saw that person, right? Like I saw Wendy or John. It's not exactly like that either.
我东巴电锯个主些电锯东边主些啥的没来了我要말해서
It's far more subtle. And so to really understand how dependent arising is underpinning emptiness and how emptiness is underpinning dependent arising is something that takes a lot of work.
他用就进来记我是对是吧我就没比他讲给我讲了我就没比要말해서我就没把意思要말해
That which lacks inherent existence is an existent object. Rangjingi mepade,
매바 맞아 로지 매바 이자
rangjin mepa yinsang,
요바래
yopares. Because it lacks inherent existence, it exists, in fact.
로지 매바 이자 얘네서 요바래
Because it lacks inherent existence, it has a mode of abiding.
그래서 어때래 아니 요바 이자 로지 매바래
Because it exists, it lacks true nature. Because it exists, it lacks true existence.
시가래랑 얘네서 요바 이자 로지 매바래
Because whatever phenomena has an ultimate mode of abiding, a way it truly is, it lacks inherent existence.
어다카네라라도 셀라용 그걸 저 이내 갈래갈 요도바 다 돼서 그 아래
So as we say these things, we want to be able to have the understanding in our mind match up with the words we are expressing.
질 땜바 이자 로지 매바래
Because it arises in dependence upon something, it lacks inherent existence.
로지 매바 이자 질 땜바래
Because it lacks inherent existence, it is a dependent arising.
어디지 어디 되지 그때 같이 뭐 예서 미지
Yeah, so we have to think about these words. He's like, why are we silent? Have a positive attitude. But it's this vocabulary, just to tell you folks, this vocabulary does get very complicated. So don't think like it's just gonna I can understand the first time I hear it, right? We do have to hear it again and again.
어다 던지게 도다 던지게 도네다는 간저 타 같은 시라가 조시 시라가 타 조시는 다 기고시는 간저 갈갈 거니
And so by proceeding in this way, we touched upon this text as well as our text on the mind training. In this way, we've been able to practice a little bit of method and a little bit of wisdom, method and wisdom together, and we've been able to proceed along the path happily.
뭐야 도대체 다 가빈 거는 경험하시고스
So thanks very much. We will do a dedication, and then if you need to get on with the rest of your Sunday, please do. But if you'd like to stay for questions, you are again most welcome. Changju semjo grembo je aje bana jeju rechi jewa nyamba meba yang Gone gonde bewa resho Ani tawa rinpo je maje bana jeju rechi jewa nyamba meba yang Gone gonde bewa so Jita kemba tang kundu sambo deyan dejen Deda kundu jeso dalo je Gewa deda tangche ratu Dusun shebe gyawa tamshe ge Ngawa gangla chodo ngawa de Dagi gewe zawa diga kyang Zambo jeje rada ngawa So through all of these merits that we've accumulated together today, may any of the obstacles to our perfectly developing positive mental qualities be cleared away. Similarly, through all of these merits, through the force of these merits, may any negativity accumulated from countless lifetimes in the past until now be completely purified. May I be able to understand how every single one of the 6 types of sentient beings within samsara is supremely close to me. May I be able to perceive them as such. May every single of the 6 types of sentient beings within samsara, through these merits, may they have a mind which is healthy and happy, a body which is happy. So thanks so much. I'll turn the volume on, and actually, I do have a question. I see a couple of people had to jam. Turn the volume on. Is this particular camera, is it any worse than our normal camera really, or can you see both of us clearly? Because to me, it seems like you can still see both of us clearly, although my eyes are not very good. Is it about the same? I see a few thumbs up. Okay.
Resolution is lower.
The resolution is lower, eh? Okay. Okay. Some people are saying both acceptable. Some people are saying the same. Okay. So if this happens again in the future, I will just immediately go to this, but hopefully we can find a way to fix it. Geshe said, did you hear us okay? He's worried. I'm worried if you could see us. He's worried if you could hear us. Could you hear us okay? Okay, great. Great. Questions?
I have a question.
Hi, Annie. Go ahead.
Hi. It's on terminology too about the 2 types of bodhicitta, conventional and ultimate. Where does aspiration to and engagement in bodhicitta fit into this? Is this the beginning of your practice of entry into bodhicitta on the conventional level? Or?
Yes, got it. Lanso di kanasagare. Kunso jangchu gisem dang dundam jangchu gisem chikyore rwa. Yine nganso yang munsem dang juksem din so dua. Munsem dang juksem agenda ni din so nangla kawa drogiores. Kunso jangchu gisem la drogiores. Kunso jangchu gisem lamla droegi go double chikyores kandis chikresa.
Mese don juse sena mese don juse tangine te 그것도 저쪽에 세레스.
So nominally, what we could say is that aspiring bodhicitta or wishing bodhicitta, I can't remember which word you used, Annie, but I think you can translate it both ways. Wishing or aspiring bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta, those are both connected with this relative or conventional bodhicitta.
다 저쪽에 생기네 마토병에네 되네 메세뇨레제야 유세뇨레제야 와스가도 저쪽에 생겨 동발레뇨레제야 와스.
But actually, the thing about these two is that before we develop that relative bodhicitta, before we bring forth relative bodhicitta, we can still practice aspiring bodhicitta by means of bringing forth that wish, and we can practice engaging bodhicitta by receiving the bodhisattva precepts and practicing accordingly.
그것도 저쪽에 세 다녀렌도비야 그것도 저쪽에 생기네 말 와스.
And so it's not like you've achieved conventional bodhicitta from the point of realization, but it's like you are practicing bodhicitta as a practice by cultivating that wish through the aspiring and by observing those precepts and so forth of the engaging. Did that answer your question?
Yes, and then for ultimate bodhicitta, or it's because you start with practicing these in a conventional sense, and then you're also practicing trying to meditate on the wisdom of realizing emptiness. Is that?
네, 된당 장축이셈 반대식 용기열is 카린 선행안소디 문센당 죽셈라 테네 군속기 정축이셈 지케네 테네 군속 정축이셈디 당냠도 통리톡 셰럽 냠렌 탑시 제디데네 된당
대도 저쪽에 생기네 대 대바침이 다 로동보토비 툴로동보토비 가라 그저 저쪽 대도 저쪽에 생기네 대 더 말했어.
So if we were to posit this at a point on the path, and he's answering it first that way, if we were to posit it as a point on the path, the moment that the Mahayana Bodhisattva reaches the path of seeing of the 5 paths of the Bodhisattvas, he or she has achieved ultimate bodhicitta. Yeah, but conventional bodhicitta, the bodhisattva, he or she can achieve that at any point, any point from the path of accumulation onwards, they can realize that relative bodhicitta, right? La. 사통보토바?
대바침에 돌로.
연결성 단수를 거는.
그 대도 저쪽에 세세나?
Yeah.
사통보토바.
네, 사통보.
대바침에 돌로토.
Yeah. Ultimate bodhicitta, on the other hand, can only be realized from the first bhumi, from the first ground of the 10 bodhisattva grounds, or from the path of seeing.
대체법아 잡아. 대체법아.
And at that moment, one becomes an Arya Mahayana Bodhisattva, a Mahayana Arya. Kunda chuechikyo. Anso kunsuk jangchu gisem kandisalgare tsoglam juya gogire duarwa. Matoshi anso tsolam joyo mare jangchu sembagi langayena.
Ya tsoloto sare, tsoloto botobane tejibares.
Yeah. So it's just to be clear that realization of the conventional bodhicitta is the door through which one enters that Mahayana path of accumulation, right? Because those 5 paths are in all formulations, but it's the door through which one enters that Mahayana path of accumulation.
다 단다 야 로서서 자잖아 지바레스. 그도 야 저주에 세가 도와 첨보여 봐지. 아니 뒤 돈에 다 되게 왜 또만일 가세 놀라잖아.
Yeah.
그래서 손주 공부 더 하게 된다. 많이 손을 도나. 그도 저주에 놀라는 거야.
So when one has entered the bodhisattva path and one is meditating on the wisdom realizing emptiness, thinking, I am developing this wisdom to be able to achieve complete enlightenment for the purpose of all sentient beings, you can say that one is practicing ultimate bodhicitta. Even if it hasn't been realized yet, one is practicing it.
그래서 대바침에 온 것도 그래서 뭐도 보이나? 슬로건이니까 저 지선이거든요, 로이가.
So the dull faculty bodhisattva, right? Dull faculty sounds so mean. I like to say limited faculty. The limited faculty bodhisattva, they are bringing forth that bodhicitta, and then according to their understanding, they have like kind of doubting about like, is wisdom like this or that? Titsum, sena tongbani ko lagi titsum.
해서 말했어.
Ale.
티섬 티유도 소유 티서 고스무 여러와.
Yeah.
티섬 니도 저
Ale, tusam nigi ko ne. So, how about that?
내가 저 솔로.
Sonam. So for the limited faculty bodhisattva, when he or she is on the path of accumulation, he or she is mainly cultivating emptiness through the wisdom of hearing and contemplation, not through meditation. They're cultivating through hearing and contemplation.
저세요다 고던도 여러와서 고진도도 그랬더니 저대.
So of course there is a little bit of meditation there. Geshe, it's not like they never meditate, but the main ones are hearing and contemplation.
다 대바침비 뭐또 보이는 졸로니까 저 고유도 저
And then when the limited faculty of bodhisattva reaches the state of jorlam, the state of the path of preparation, gomso, then they are mainly meditating upon wisdom.
다 대지 강가지 가다 나지 약간 저기 바래 등한 조가 다들 여러와서 네 다 원래 제일 먹고 여러마도 대도세시 말레스.
So that is the way that those beings are practicing the ultimate bodhicitta, even before realization. And in fact, Geshe said we might not be able to do it exactly as a bodhisattva, but we can incorporate that method of practicing ourselves as well.
다 디네를 다 동행에서도 가디 도소나 다 대도세시 년에 뒤뒤라 말레스.
But when the wisdom of realization is actually brought forth, that is when one has realized ultimate bodhicitta. It's not just a practice anymore, one has realized it. So Geshe said that if you're interested in understanding more about how that unfolds, you look at Madhyamakavatara, entering the middle way.
And
Geshe said the Madhyamakavatara too is really wonderful in terms of explaining the difference between like the Bodhisattva 5 paths and the 5 paths of the hearers and so forth. Like where is the wisdom realizing emptiness happen? How does that unfold differently? It looks at a lot of things like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Very
Yeah.
much. It's very helpful.
Does anyone else have a question? I see like 18 messages in the chat, but I guess there's no question. Jay. So, Dave Kitchty. Dave, is there any question on our socials? If not, Geshe is gonna. Okay. He said he'll tell the story then. He said it was a long story, so he might go a little bit over, folks. He's like, Ngodrup doesn't like the long stories. I love the long stories. I just love them when I hear them before, so they don't get lost in the story. But anyways, we'll do our best. So he said, in fact, it kind of tacks on to a story that we've told before. So it's like the next chapter. Ale, sema. 송자기. So at the time of the Buddha, there were 2 brothers, and they were both merchants. And so their names were Nakpa Champo and Nakpo Chunga Tilagi. And so at the time, so at the time that Nakpo Chempo and Nakpo Chunga, the 2 merchants, they were traveling like, I think it was like in a bullock cart or something with a lot of their possessions, to go trade, to go and sell. They somehow heard music, which was the sound of the Dharma. They heard some music, which was the sound of the Dharma.
아니 뭐 야면 쇼 딜라자는 로고디 스티디가 다 간저도 공시도 안 뭐지레스 근데 그러라
Dungardabuji.
근데 취수 그런 뭐 레그라 왔어 에너지 뭐 그전 로고도 왔어
And so when that sound of Dharma was heard, Geshe said it functions a little bit like a Dharma teaching announcement would happen. You know, like if they say His Holiness the Dalai Lama is teaching, you'll see kind of like a poster, and then everyone is going to kind of amass at the place where he's going to be teaching the Dharma. So it was a little bit like that.
아니 막가 건조게 졌잖아. 건조 전속 강가 딜라자는 쇼 로고 가도고 와서 손짓도 된 데서 하티 다 손짓도 된 데서 말와 뒤에 세계 하면 다 도착 된다고 수준으로 요아레스
So they heard this music and they saw all of these people rushing and they said, where are all of you running to, right? Like, what is happening?
아니 빈자 체한테 제대 만다이 고 바자고 바자 제와 지수 좀 왔습니다.
중앙디에.
체가.
체가디.
그래 빈자 체가 더 당하고 다르진 로 그건데. 다 빈자 취한테 다 잘라 강가 졸업 큰일 충강가 자니라. 로바소로 징아 다 그나 진행가 동이 있어.
So the elder brother thought about it for a second and he said, I really want to go and hear where the Dharma is being spoken in that place. So he asked his younger brother to do him a favor to take the possessions on the cart and go to market and sell them. And he was going to go and investigate this teacher.
다 코문안도 손지산도 진행을 과할 레베더니 다리 아티한테 와침보가 와침보더니 제자들 말아 차는 코체네. 그래도 손지 그쪽 잔이던 그거 잡아서 저기 왔어.
And so the elder brother, he went and he heard the Buddha. He found out that the teacher was the Buddha speaking, and he was able to bring forth great joy and great faith in what the Buddha was saying. And then he didn't want to go back to what he was doing before. So he was moved to become a bhikshu. He became a monk.
다 빈자 취한테 잘라 강가 받지 된 저러고 양조 논을 로바서 지당아 저체는 조자들은 로그메스 다 오주신노레신 뜻아 되게 있어.
And so when his younger brother kind of returned to meet him up, he said, okay, you're going to have to take care of the family business. And now you can take care of like selling all of the stuff because I'm not interested in that anymore. I want to study and practice these teachings.
다들 kinole che goja tendizame kope pestijedo mandawa pe mesetele ta tu maning eseto tu ale ta pia da chuma ya bochando duas
Yeah. And so the elder brother actually, he studied and practiced to the point that he had a direct, that he had the wisdom realizing emptiness, and he became a very great practitioner.
다 tenichabe 다 pinja chuate tendewa menela ko akosara kin nomani ta ga isa kon dewa menela ko pinja chega de malea ke tende ko tabazo de mazo ni kon dogi duas.
So the younger brother experienced some difficulty trying to take care of the business all by himself. So he also became a bhikshu. He joined the monks, but he became a monk solely for the purpose of being able to be close to his brother to convince him to go back to the family business.
다 손지게 체도 체가 와서 계시게 지기 할 때는 가 계승이 요 말했어.
And of course, the Buddha, the ordination master at that time was the Buddha, and he knew this, right? Because the Buddha is clairvoyant, but he decided not to say anything.
So tiserewo dera ko pinja chega ma ti to marwas ko pete to le saresnyole.
But whatever happened, he wasn't able to convince his elder brother to leave the monastic community because his elder brother had already achieved like quite a level of realization.
아니 니마치로 손지도 걸어서 가가 알로 년도를 pinja 추가 돼서 놀 달라 사가지 된데신이라. 지레게 좋아서 건서.
So one day, the Buddha invited his disciples, including the elder and the younger merchant brothers, who were now monks, to come and take a meal together.
다 pinja 추가 돼서 놀 칼라산에 되더니 이제 칼라 차서 차산에 반도비 칼라 pinja 추가 되게 나 지를 용기 놀 때 되게 있으니 그때 되게 좋았어.
So at the time, Chungadi Padronirwa,
chimme 손지도 chega 지 반도니라.
Pija Chewadi Padroson Sudes.
야 다 반도 추한테 돼서 와서 코로노로 와.
So at the time of eating with the Buddha, the elder brother excused himself and he went out and he left the younger brother with the Buddha.
아니 다 pinja 추한테 놀 때에 갈 노 포게도 제메도 강가요. 다 그치 콘도 초파만로만 가지고 계신 기본문도 세콘도 여러시기 됐어.
Ale, konso sange당 양주 칼라사요 말에 konso 낭미당 양주 사절에도아.
너무도 손진어도 기와레스.
Ale, okay. So,
내가 말파.
So at the time they were eating with the Buddha, also the family, the former family of the two brothers arrived. And after the elder brother kind of left, the younger brother and the Buddha were still there. And they asked him, they said, please do not return to the Sangha. Please remain and take care of your family responsibilities.
다 pinja 추한테 또 뭐는 곧 다발 되니 기와 말에 곧 가서 곧 pinja chiga ma chui ten ko tawa za isa kon dewa yo ma was.
Yeah. And so, of course, for the younger brother, he contemplated this a little bit because remember, he didn't really become a monk for the sake of cultivating the path to liberation. He became a monk because he wanted to convince his older brother to leave.
아니 다 코데 여기 was 노래 여기 야선 지사 하면 되는 거 따라 거 뭐니 타와 dewa yo ma wa. 쉬한테
Yeah.
그런 노는 것만 노지 대가 요 마 와.
Yeah. So, ko sangidangyamdu padroma sondonda.
야야야 다
Chabadangyamdu droma sondonda. Ko de.
노는 게 살아 was. 뭐 여보서 대로 와.
Yeah.
이만 노는 여자 씨는 대로 지선 거수 자네.
Yeah.
배 노는 대자 이루.
Ale. Pekko tonsungtanda. Ko de nga khalik cheni kechichi itani soso lenja. So diagati. Ko chungadi ko tonsung niga nangila lebson. Tomatsi tesko. Tomba chomde de dan kalasagi re joa. Tene chempodi ko pardro tsare doa.
첨보도 손제도 강가 판로 차서 깨끗하게 해주면 춘주도 그런 노는 대서 was. 그런 노와.
하고선.
근데 그런 노는 다 저런 만들어 잡아서가.
Yeah.
먼저 기본 먼저 거수 자네 거다 빼도 대차서 춘주대.
Chunjidi. And so eventually, because he hadn't had that wish for liberation, the younger brother, he ended up staying behind in the home and he did not return to the Sangha with the older brother and the Buddha.
다들 저 잡아 강게 잡아도 손제 강게 하고 그랬더니 손제기 라그만 그것만은 대화요만 왔어.
And in fact, the Buddha and the elder brother, they didn't send for him and they didn't try to convince him to change his mind because the Buddha and also his older brother, now that he had achieved realization, they knew that he hadn't had that strong wish from the beginning.
아니 마치를 빈자 체가 돼서 다들이 빠대 아본 거 되니라 너무 티가
Yeah.
하고서 와 빈자 체가 돼서 요 칼라 손지 거도 집어 칼라 돼서 왔어 만오지
Pinga chungadi.
체가 돼서
Chegadi. Ale. Losolo. Ineko trapadat.
Yeah.
And so then, again, at the behest of the elder brother, thinking that maybe he could manage something, he asked the family to invite the Buddha for food again, and they did.
너무 가가라 와 하고서 와
Yeah.
아 빈자 체가 돼서 노를 칼라산에 되니라 저는 빈자 체가 돼서 너무 티가 그래서 빈자 체가 되러 와
Yeah.
그때에서 내가 같이 데려지스
Yeah.
손지 거도 집어 밥에 장이
Ale. And at that point, the two families were there, but the inviters were the direct family of the elder brother, right? The realized one. And they asked, don't return with the Buddha right away. Stay and spend some time with the family.
그래서 넘어가서 자네 내가 같이 데려지스
So they said, please just stay with us for a few days before you go back.
다 된도비깔 판도비깔 했더니 손지도 면도를 걸어 잡아먹어 뭐 여러 왔어. 그다음에 손지를 깨졌더니 다 비자 체가 됐던서 자나. 그대서 왔어.
Yeah.
그대서 자나. 고용 치마용아 차로 그러 왔어. 나만 추가 치마용아 좋았어. 왔어.
And so at the time that the Buddha and the other monks who the meal had been offered to were returning to the monastery, the monks said to the Buddha, you shouldn't have let the older one stay behind with the family because just like the younger one who stayed behind, he probably isn't going to come back.
다까 디딜 손지가 가정한 줄 로지대. 세지 체리바.
Yeah.
하고서 옴비고도 봐.
Yeah.
세지 체리바서 칼라사야를 체 그래.
Yeah.
저바 체야 말까 디디갈 때 지수 말해.
And it was said that at this time, it was when the Buddha set forth the rules. Kalamangta masada bochikro tse badu sasho.
세지 체리바 아사 체 말이나. 다 된거다요 말해. 손직수야.
Yes.
추가데 체가니 다그 말해.
Alelo.
체가데 내비 그 유다토라 레자를 잡아디요 말해. 대이제 그 놀래들 여다요 말 지금 그래.
And the Buddha said, you don't need to worry about the elder one, for he has achieved liberation. One who has achieved liberation cannot be bewildered by the wonders of samsara, beautiful tastes, sounds, smells, and so forth. Therefore, he is definitely going to return.
추가데 단에 잡아 유다토라 레자를 잡아디게 단다 리도 도메아 이제 콜바제 요아레 스코티뉴 말해.
The younger one, he remains attached to and bewildered by beautiful forms, tastes, sounds, and so forth. And that is the reason he will not be able to return. So, of course, this is true. For the elder one, there was no trace of attachment left. He had achieved the state of a foe destroyer, and then to stay for a few days, there was no doubt that he would come back.
다 지스 봄마 대와도 다 고자에 가리나
So if we don't know the measure when to stop as an attached being, the Buddha then spoke a teaching about the measure that one should eat, right? Not too full. Then on the basis of overindulging in food, right? We can't sleep, we feel uncomfortable and so forth. If we eat just the right amount, not overfilling ourselves, the food will be fuel for our practice. And after eating, we'll still be able to maintain our mindfulness and introspection. So Geshe said that this is a story connected with one from before. So if there's too much attachment, this will lead to more problems. Yeah, and so that is the story of those two brothers, Nakpo Chempo and Napo Chungcho. So the word, so I was saying to Geshe, because if you translate Nakpo Chempo and Nakpo Chunga, right, it's like the great black one and the small black one. But I didn't want to translate it that way because, people might think that this is like some sort of racial thing, but actually it's not. Because Nagpopa, the great black one, this is Krishnacharya, who is like one of the great masters of the Chakrasamvara lineage. So I actually said Nagpopa by accident. But anyways, I want to say that them being named in this way was not kind of saying anything bad. Just want to make clear. So one important thing, though, to take away from this is that when the Buddha talked about eating one's fill, there should be a measure of when we know we have enough. And if we know we have enough, whether we're talking about food, whether we're talking about enjoyments, music, anything that we enjoy, this will help us from overindulging, being overly attached, and so forth. Yeah. Because we don't know this practice of contentment, and we can't say we've reached the measure of our fill. This is why we see that people, even when they become supremely wealthy, they never think it is enough. They are continuously striving for more because they don't know what the measure of enough is. So the mental suffering of that wealthy person who doesn't know when they've reached their measure is said to be greater than those in poverty. Those who are in poverty, maybe they have enough difficulties getting enough to eat and so forth, they are said to experience more physical suffering. So there are two important lines from the Entering the Middle Way. And this is where it is explained that those who possess great wealth and reputation, they have greater mental suffering. Those who are in physical and material poverty, they have greater physical suffering. If one is wealthy or if one is poor, if one is able to practice contentment of having the feeling of it being enough, this will help maintain mental peace. On the basis of contentment, especially as Dharma practitioners, having been content with what we have, having this idea that it is enough, this is a very important practice. Yeah. Say Ripa. So recognizing what enough is, recognizing what the measure of enough is. So that measure of it being enough and this practice of contentment, you'll find this in many texts like the greater stages of the path, the middling stages of the path, the various Lamrim texts, and so forth. So Geshe said, like, also knowing his kind of limit, or his knowing what's enough with sweet things, he doesn't know that, right? Which is why he suffers from really bad allergies. Because in Tibetan medicine, the more sweets you eat, the worse allergies you had. And he says he knows that it brings the allergies, but yet he can't stop himself from eating the sweet things. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Since there's no more questions, I think we'll leave it there. Just a reminder, Essence of Vajrayana next Saturday from 10 till about 11:30. And the Sunday, we are meeting at 8 o'clock, not 10, 8 o'clock Canadian time for the Bodhisattva vows and the transmissions of Gandhanagyama and the Namgyala mantra. Take care.
달로 때문에 거기 토론토를 that 저 손지가 되네 디셰트 속에 집어서 그래서
Yeah. So Geshe said that the reason like we've shifted it earlier is so that he can participate at this meeting of all of the Sangha in the Greater Toronto area have been invited on Sagadawa. So that's
야, 제
Everyone
care,
is
everybody.
invited. By the way, everyone is invited to the Tibetan Canadian Cultural Center. So if you want to participate in a large Sagadawa gathering, lots going on there. Everybody's welcome.
Sorry, I just wanted to say it's 7 o'clock in the morning, not 8.
Thank you, Manoshi. It's 7 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry,
God.
it's earlier.
No,
So that
no,
Geshe
I
and you can
appreciate
get
it.
your lunch.
Yes.
It's
Thank you
quite
for
early.
speaking up. Okay. 7 to 8 o'clock. We'll send out a reminder for folks maybe also in case anyone's left already and heard me give the time wrong. Okay.
야, 제
Thanks, everybody. Take care.